It is my profound honor to introduce a visionary leader, an outstanding civil rights lawyer, and a tireless advocate for justice, Maya Wiley, as the 2025 American Bar Association recipient of its Thurgood Marshall Award.
Maya was very, very clear, I think, all her life about what she was going to do. Go to Dartmouth, become a lawyer. Everything she said she was going to do, she did.
When I got to meet her mom, and then I heard all the stories of her father, which she didn't tell early on, I learned them over the years, I could see where she got it from. I don't know if it was nature or nurture, but it was very clear that this was going to be her pathway and her trajectory. It was who she was.
If you think about the fact that I didn't really know who her dad was until we were adults, never, oh, well, my dad was a civil rights leader. You know, some people are like that. Never. I didn't know. And so I think humility is the thing. And how to be that amazing and that strong and that powerful and that magnetic and still be humble and not believe your own press.
I've known Maya Wiley since her first year at Columbia Law School. She was a graduate of the law school in 1989. And what I found most impressive about Maya, even as a first-year student, was her groundedness, her sense of purpose, and the way in which she combined an absolutely fierce intelligence with a deep passion for social justice, advocacy, and activism in the law school.
I remember in our third year, there was a protest organized. And it's the only protest I remember actually happening during the 3 years that we were at law school. And it was about an AIDS legal clinic that we had at Columbia. And Maya was one of the students in the clinic. And there was a concern that the professor who was running the clinic was not going to be rehired and that the clinic would be shut down. So Maya and a few other people organized a protest to hopefully ensure that that would not happen. I went there and I assumed there'd be about 20 students, kind of the usual suspects in a way. And I got there and there were 200 students there. It was really amazing. 200 Columbia Law students all camped out in front of the dean's office. And of course, there in front, was Maya, leading people in protest chants, getting people fired up, as is her wont. I've seen her do that in many other contexts since then, but that was definitely the first time that I saw Maya in action.
Maya and I share a long journey. We both spent early portions of our legal careers at the ACLU and the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, working in the tradition of Thurgood Marshall and so many others who believed the law could be a tool for transformation. And even back then, Maya stood out. She combined fierce intellect with a deep sense of purpose, always centering the people and communities our systems often leave behind. And since those early days, Maya has never stopped pushing boundaries, never stopped imagining and insisting on what's possible.
When Maya came to me about a litigation idea, about expanding the healthcare system so that poor people or people without means have greater access. I mean, it's critical. We needed something written somewhere which would be their gateway into the system. And when I listened to her, I didn't have to listen long. I said, to myself, I said, with this movement, and this is talking to myself with Maya standing in front of me, I said, I need, and LDF needs Maya on the legislative side of this fight. We need her to help us get the law written and passed. Then we can do all of these things she's talking about. But so I said to her, Maya, I want you to meet Wade Henderson of the NAACP. I told Maya, I said, you will spend your time with Wade. And up on that hill, Wade introducing you to those folk, those House members and those members of the Senate, and you're going to put your brain with his and everybody else in the coalition to let's try to get this new healthcare law passed. So, I knew the Hill. I mean, I spent 14 years up there. I knew who they were and what they were doing. But Maya hadn't been up there. But she was talking about the power of legislation. She thought something needed to happen there. She wasn't sure what or how. And I was the mechanism to help her, connect her to that part of what she needed. And it worked.
Maya was always a systems thinker, right? She was always very clear that you fix systems, not people. And she was always very clear that you learned and understood systems by also knowing and understanding history. And she saw before most people saw that the next wave of the racial justice movement was going to be about systems and structures. And towards that end, she founded the Center for Social Inclusion. I cannot overstate how much her work during that period leapt forward the work of systemic and structural racism, which eventually became the central strategy for the racial justice movement.
I think the example she sets is that in whatever capacity you currently serve, no matter what hat you're currently wearing, you can always have a role in advancing social justice for the underserved.
And she carried that same clarity and courage into City Hall, becoming the first Black woman to serve as counsel to the mayor. And there, Maya led efforts that redefined what equity can look like in government. Where others saw bureaucracy, Maya saw people.
I remember one of the initiatives that consumed a lot of her time was bringing broadband to struggling inner city communities.
The reason that she tackled broadband when she went to the de Blasio administration is she understood it was our system of sharing information. That's where her interest with public broadband came from. She understood that kids doing homework at McDonald's was a systemic problem with interactions of a lot of different systems.
She is a social policy activist to her core. And her commitment to social justice is something that she carries with her in whatever position she's occupying at any particular time. It doesn't matter who she's working for or what the ostensible purpose of the organization is. She's going to advance a social justice agenda. That's who she is. It just doesn't go away, no matter what hat she's wearing.
As chair of the New York City Civilian Complaint and Review Board, a role that we both held at different times, Maya met one of the toughest moments in the board's history with courage and principle. She didn't flinch. She fought for transparency, accountability, and dignity for communities that really are too often ignored by systems of power. And she made it clear that independent oversight must mean exactly that, independent. Maya is just a remarkable human being. She is generous with her time, passionate in her mentorship, and really deeply committed to lifting others as she climbs. She listens, she builds, she believes.
And one of the things that I'm most grateful to and always delighted by is Maya's willingness to come back to the law school and talk to current students, as she did most recently at the Alumni of Color reception.
And so to have someone like Maya come back to the school, talk to people about her experiences, they can see what she's done now, they know that it's all possible.
She understands and appreciates that she's preparing a path that our current students can follow.
I followed in her footsteps. We both worked at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, but at different times. We both worked at Open Society Foundations at different times. And we both came to Washington, D.C. to do advocacy in and out of the Beltway, but at different times. And so Maya has really blazed a trail for me and so many others to follow.
Maya has effortless warmth because it's authentic. And that comes across, I think, instantly when people meet her, whether they're meeting her in person or, as I'm sure people have seen from her MSNBC days, even if they're meeting her, across the screen.
When Maya was first doing TV, I didn't even know she was doing that because she never said a word. This is a perfect example. Nothing. And one day, I don't even know how, she goes, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this segment on Bill Maher. And I was like, what? So I tuned in. And then I was like, well, why didn't you ever say anything? And she's kind of like, well, what would I say? It was so crazy. Then I didn't even know she was on MSNBC. You know how I knew? Other friends that knew that I knew her.
I can only think of a handful of our other graduates who have been able to use the media, particularly the medium of television, as such an effective platform about the importance of defending civil rights and human rights.
You never heard anyone say Ahmaud Arbery committed a crime. The defendants actually, frankly, instigated the violence that ended in his death.
In these moments when there is so much happening, she will take and understand what are the kind of things that are going to move us forward. And I do believe Maya has a real special ability of wanting to connect and understand. And I think I saw that in Maya as she was running for mayor.
Maya is Maya, incredibly savvy, very thoughtful and smart, but she is going to be herself. And I think in her campaign, she was herself.
It was along the theme. Where could I be most useful? What can I bring to this experience to make things better? And that was really, and I'm paraphrasing probably how she might put it, but that was the reason. She didn't run for mayor because she wanted to be a politico. That's not why she did it. She did it because she thought she had something to offer.
She won't compromise a position because it's popular if it's the wrong thing to do. And I think that she brought that part of her, that piece of her, to her campaign, and it resonated with people, kind of like a breath of fresh air.
And now, as president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, she leads one of the most important coalitions in our democracy.
We have had to link arms across the most diverse coalition in the country that looks like a majority of the country, that has most major religious faiths, that has labor, that has educators, that has everyone. And we have linked arms to ensure and continue to protect the gains we have made.
Maya demonstrated her incredible leadership from day one. When she started her role at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, it was just when the Supreme Court decided the decision overturning Roe v. Wade. There were tears, there was fear, there was intense anxiety, and in her early days on this job at the Leadership Conference, Maya really rallied the troops. She gave us a way to fight forward, not just to retreat and fall back. She really rose to the occasion, and she was the fresh leadership that we all needed at exactly the right time.
You meet people in certain settings, and you form impressions, and you may even develop a strong friendship. But you realize that you don't know everything about what makes this person who they are. And so reading Maya's book was in some parts reinforced what I already knew about her, but it contained many revelations that gave me aha moments that said, wow, so that's why Maya is who she is.
And I know the woman, and I read the book and learned so much more about her. and what an amazing journey that she has been on.
When I think of Maya, one of the words that just pops out is compassionate.
Purposeful,
Empathetic,
Nurturing,
relentless.
She feels deeply.
She is a natural born leader.
For somebody like Maya to be the recipient of the Thurgood Marshall Award also just speaks to her unflagging commitment to civil and human rights in whatever space she's occupying. And those have been varied spaces.
Maya Wiley brings the spirit of Thurgood Marshall into our current moment.
When I think of Thurgood Marshall and what he did going before the Supreme Court in Brown and losing quite a few times, by the way, before ultimately winning, he didn't give up. Perseverance, resilience. And that's Maya Wiley, perseverance, resilience, courage. And I can think of no one else more fitting for this award than Maya Wiley.
I want to say to you, Maya, what the great John Hope Franklin, the great sociologist, said to me when I called John Hope. He was on my board then, he was 90 years old. And I was retiring from the Legal Defense Fund, and I was just about 60. And I said, John Hope, I'm stepping down as head of LDF. I was met with a silence. All I could hear was silence. And I said, what's the matter, John Hope? What? He said, I'm sick of babies retiring. Sick. So, Maya, don't get the idea that you can step down now. Just because you may have hit a certain mark in life. There's too much that you have to offer. So we need you to continue to stay in this fight. And because we've got to get the 14th Amendment back, we've got work to do. And we need you and your colleagues and the generations following you to get it done.
Tonight, we celebrate Maya Wiley, not only for what she has accomplished, but for the moral clarity and fearless leadership she continues to offer us all. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring the recipient of the 2025 ABA Thurgood Marshall Award, my dear friend, Maya Wiley.